It is a psychological norm for individuals to not empathize with those issues that do not affect them. History is often written by those who win in battle or conquer the minds of a population. America and much of this world have had a one-sided telling of history that is perpetuated into society. The victims of this perspective have been the descendants of Africa and other indigenous peoples around the world. We do not know how the continent would have been if not interfered with. However, what if a new paradigm was created where Africa and its nations maintain a global superiority on this earth? Blackwash, the untold stories of reverse racism, produces this narrative using factual events of the past and present. It is a fictional twist on nonfiction that the world needs to heal. This novel aims to produce a mental shift within its readers while alleviating systemic racism and oppression without experiencing the same trauma lived by the subjugated. What if the narrative of systemic racism and oppression was reversed? Would you understand then? Hi, I'm Benjamin Fife, the narrator of Blackwash by Rodney Cloud Hill. Blackwash is a brilliant and necessary look at the history of Black and white America over the last 500 years. I've narrated audiobooks for 3 years. I have lived my life insulated from Black America and the Black American experience in one of the whitest states and communities in the nation. I grew up being told that racism was a thing of the past, but with some subconscious generational racist propaganda embedded in my psyche from centuries of systemic oppression of those of African and other descents in the US. That much programming takes time and conscious effort to be undone. Out of the books that I've narrated so far, several deal with racism head on. A year ago, we witnessed the aftermath of the George Floyd killing across America. I wish he were the last Black man to receive the ultimate treatment of law enforcement turned judge, jury, and executioner in our country. But for me, and I think many others, it became a turning point. I will no longer sit quietly on the sidelines while a human being is oppressed unfairly. Silence becomes tacit approval of abuse of power and oppression. When I saw Blackwash, the untold stories of reverse racism, up for audition, my initial reaction was to run from it like hell. I figured it was probably written by some revisionist history nut who thinks white people are somehow oppressed. But it kept sticking in my mind to look into it further. I'm glad I did. Mr. Hill isn't about history revision, but instead completely flips history on its head. Blackwash takes actual events, swaps out the names, instead of African descent people in America having to have their cultural history Europeanized. Think Kunta Kinte becoming Toby. What if Africa had been the dominant force of the last 500 years? Then Alex Haley's roots would have been Abdullah Homatani's roots, and Toby James would have been named Kunta Kinte and portrayed by Will Wheaton instead of LeVar Burton. But 500 years of programming is hard to undo. Even narrating the book, it was difficult to keep the flipped perspective in my mind, partially because Mr. Hill has flipped every name in the book. Part of the genius of the project is how hard it is to truly get into the headspace of those who have been oppressed for centuries, because it is so foreign an idea to us. There aren't an enormous number of things that I hadn't heard of, but enough that I know our current history has undoubtedly been whitewashed. Blackwash is a book for healing the divides in our nation, our world, and our very own hearts of the racism that has been bred and fed there for generations. I recommend it for any and all who live in America or anywhere who have experienced racism or oppression, either on the giving or receiving end, because ultimately we are all one. What happens to one happens to all.